On today's World Insight, impressions on China's military parade celebrating the 80th anniversary of the nation's World War II victory. We'll hear from former Belgian Prime Minister Yves Leterme after a parade ringside view about why China's a beacon of peace and development.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Remember the spectacular military parade in Beijing to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War. It became the focus of international attention, bringing to light China's contribution to global peace and development. Former Belgian Prime Minister Yves Leterme attended the milestone moment. I sat down with him recently in Beijing to talk about his impressions of the parade, and he shared his views on its significance to peace and stability, as well as global governance. Take a listen. Did you have a good time that day at the Tiananmen Square watching the Grand Parade?
It was a fantastic experience. The historic role and responsibility China shoulders now that it has lived through an unprecedented social and economic development over the last decades. I think that when you witness the parade and you connect it, you link it to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization declaration speech by President Xi and his proposal for a global governance initiative, the fourth initiative announced by President Xi. I think for me, in a nutshell, that's the most important. I think every important celebration, like we have the landing in Normandy, like this Victory Day in China, there's a military parade. And I'm not a military expert, and personally I think that weapons should only be used very reluctantly when there's no alternative. I prefer diplomacy and peaceful settlement of differences. And so for me it was very important to connect this to the narrative and the philosophy that was put forward, that China indeed wants to shoulder the responsibility, wants to take up its role in global governance.
Many give high remarks about your presence as a friend of China and as someone who has been interacting with this part of the world in Asia often over the past decades, to be there in Tiananmen Square to witness this grand event. But at the same time, people took note that there has been very limited European leaders present in that occasion. What do you make of that fact?
I think people should understand that the official representatives of the European Union cannot just show up on behalf, representing their nations. The celebration of Victory Day, in the light of history, respecting and fully understanding the position of the official institutions, I think it is important also to keep open a good dialogue and to show some respect also for the Chinese nation that, after all, terribly suffered from, let's say, the Nanjing massacre till the decisive victories in 45, to show some respect for the decisively positive role that the Chinese nation played into bringing the Second World War to an end.
What was it like for you to be there and see the crowds, 50,000 public, show up in Tiananmen Square?
Well, military parades are a part of National Day celebrations and celebrations of very important days. My own city where I live was the center of gravity of the First World War, and we frequently have celebrations of the end of the First World War. So, but
we
of
also
course,
see our neighbors, for example, Vietnam just had one
yeah,
for
so
their V-days, and
I'm kind of used
UK.
to see this or to watch at these celebrations. Of course, what you have with China, the feeling that is always present when I see that kind of initiatives and that kind of performances is, I would summarize it in 3 words. It's once again a proof of the speed of development of this nation, the volume and the scale. the speed. It is unprecedented how over the last decades, for 1.4 billion people, China managed to open up and to reform its economy and its society, and to eradicate extreme poverty, to eradicate starvation, and to bring progressively but very speedily bring social and economic progress to the whole of the nation, to all the people. So I would like to again pay a tribute for that performance. This is really, well, performance, I mean, for that achievement. Yeah. And it is not because it is already discussed very frequently that we should forget this. This is really unprecedented. It is an enormous achievement by the whole Chinese nation. Secondly, there is of course the volume, and sorry to use that word, but I mean the numbers are always impressive. So when you refer to Tiananmen and the parade, indeed, people were a little bit, well, there are more people present than in smaller countries, which makes sense. There was also enthusiasm, and not only there on Tiananmen, but also yesterday I traveled to Weihai, and you hear the people proudly and highly speaking and commenting the parade and the celebration of Victory Day. Last but not least, there is the scale also, the scale of the display that was showcased, that was demonstrated. You see, I think, a Chinese nation that not only has had this social and economic progress and in different fields realized enormous breakthroughs in the scientific field, technological field, but that very clearly wants to be capable of defending itself against aggression, but also is capable and is very motivated to play an important new role on the global stage. And there again, the global governance initiative by President Xi Jinping is the kind of narrative through which we should, as far as I'm concerned, we should read and understand the celebration.
Is China eager to impress others, or others pleasant being impressed, or both?
I think both. I think that you have a national pride, like lots of nations in the world, most of the nations. And so you see that people are proud of their nation, proud of their performance, and that, well, they are proud also of the performances of the PLA. I personally had the opportunity to learn to know the efficiency and effectiveness of the People's of the Liberation Army when I was in Jiuzhaigu Valley with an earthquake some 7-8 years ago. So for me, it is reality. This is a.
They were working as the rescue team.
Yeah, they were working there as a rescue team, and I saw their effectiveness and their efficient help. So there is this pride on the Chinese side, and there is of course the fact that the people witnessing this, watching TV, were all impressed. I got a lot of feedback from people that said, "Well, this was very impressive."
Many Chinese people also know very well in Belgium. You have someone called, who has the nickname of a Chinese Schindler, who a Chinese woman who managed to talk to the Nazis at the time and managed to, in a way, save a few hundred lives of fighters. And I understand that local place where she was born and lived in Belgium throughout her life.
I know about the story, and I think they rightly paid a tribute to what you call the comparison with Schindler, the Chinese Schindler. So I think that is a very good initiative to bring this again to the forefront as a really commendable behavior. I would like to refer also to, as far as my region is concerned, for instance, to the story of the China Labor Corps just after during and first year after the First World War. And so you have lots of ordinary, average citizens, indeed, that have played an important positive role in breaking the aggression. I was recently in Nanjing, and I visited the Nanjing Massacre Museum, read about the Nanjing Massacre. Terrible, cruel facts. And you read in the stories about people that, at the risk of their own sake and life, took initiatives to protect others, children, older people, colleagues at work, foreigners. So indeed, it is good to bring this again to the knowledge of the mass. Yeah.
Mr. Prime Minister, as a member of the Club of Madrid, you together put forward suggestions to the United Nations back in the month of July, suggesting that the UN Charter should be abided by. So do you see much hope as a result when China put forward the GGI, the Global Governance Initiative, and emphasized once and again some of the basic principles that appeared also in the UN Charter?
Well, for me it's a sign of hope. On the other hand, we have to face reality. The hope that we can join forces, Europe and China, to re-strengthen the multilateral system. But the reality today is that a P5 member of the setup that exists today is going at war, and that the UN system is incapable, doesn't have the capacity to peacefully settle the differences, and that, well, that creates a lot of concern. But the Global Governance Initiative, I carefully read it 2-3 times. I think that's a proposal that is well along the lines of the UN Charter and of visions we have in Europe and in Club de Madrid to re-strengthen the multilateral system.
During the earlier interaction between the European leaders and also the US president, at least according to media commentary, it seems that the European leaders are being sidelined in the latest interactions between Russia and Ukraine, with the US as the middleman. What do you think is the nature of this cross-Atlantic interaction regarding the Russian-Ukraine crisis?
I would not say that the Europeans were sidelined. It is right, it's fair to say that Mr. Trump has taken some initiatives, and it sometimes took a little bit of time to understand the logic of these initiatives. But nevertheless, well, there was action, there was the attempt to try to find at least a way to bring the parties to talk and to interact with each other in a peaceful way, to try to find solutions to what is happening, the terrible things that are happening in Ukraine. So at the end of the day, that's the most important. But I think it is also very important to underline that over the last days there have been a dialogue between President Trump and European leaders, and I think that although it is normal that US and Europe have some different views and different perspectives on what's happening, it is important that they talk to each other and they try to find common positions.
Let's come back to the Global Governance Initiative. It is being put out at a time when a lot of countries seem to look more inward rather than internationally. And some scholars in the world even begin to have their discussion as to why, at least to them, appears to be many of the leaders of some of the most powerful countries are becoming more nationalistic as a whole group rather than globalist. Mm-hmm. What is your understanding of this apparent change?
There are lots of reasons, and it's a complex interaction of different reasons. I think one that is underestimated and is sometimes linked also to the socioeconomic progress made by China, it is that in lots of nations, the opening up of the economy, the increased competition between national companies, the globalization of the economy is putting pressure on safety and security of jobs. There is the speed of development, the technological breakthroughs. So I think this pressure on the own existence, the impact of all these very important changes and very important elements of progress also, but that always come with some risks and downsides. I think this kind of the impact of these developments on the own security future of people makes them unsure. And then you normally have defensive reactions. And defensive reactions means, to a certain extent, exacerbating differences and trying to form groups. And I think that certainly in politics, in electoral politics, nationalism, it is often via nationalism that these feelings are fueled and sometimes are exacerbated. And I think this is so these underpinning economic, let's say, fundamental things that are happening, changes that are going on, transformations, not only transitions, but fundamental transformations, where also in European countries, for instance, people perceive increased international competition, including from China. People sometimes feel like being an outsider to what's happening, don't fully participate in ICT developments and in all kinds of new technological opportunities also. And I think that based on that, there is a kind of defensive reaction where some political parties seize the opportunity to exacerbate defensive reactions and translate them in antagonism towards some groups that are then used as scapegoats, but sometimes rightly also or pointed at as bringing some problems that have to be managed.
And who should manage that? That's the question, isn't it?
Well, first of all, we should very well understand and try to stay cool-headed and rational when we see such developments. I think there's a very important task for leaders to lead, which means not only following the tendencies in the public opinion,
or manipulate
but also being able to take some risks and to say, well, even when today I'm criticized, I think for the sake of the community, for the good of the community, this is the way we should handle this. And then based on, in our systems, elections and political choices, policy options, problems should be solved. But it is important, I think, that we try to convince the people with a vision on the future where sometimes some sacrifices have to be brought, including to keep in place social security schemes and competitiveness of our economies, for instance. So to show this way and to clearly bring a vision which is realistic, but is contains solutions for problems, I think that is key. That's the most important task, I think, for political leaders today. It's not an easy one. And I'm certainly not jealous of not being in charge anymore. I think it's a hell of a job for the current generation of leaders. Situations are changing very rapidly. Democracy is also challenged, the way political parties have to function. So there is a lot of problems to address.
And there are some of the fundamental global governance factors that are now also being changed as we speak. For example, the tariff war, one nation against the rest of the world, and now the dust is still not settled because of their internal legislation process, also put question marks to whether these tariffs are legal or not. How do you see these uncertainties? What is the best way for economies to handle that? Do you see the European economies are having a good solution to it?
The European Union, I think China also, but certainly the European Union, needs free trade and openness as a human body needs oxygen. It was created as a space where goods and services and persons would freely circulate. And there's still some work to do to make it really happen in reality in some domains, but still that's the basic idea. So the only way for Europe to overcome the challenges of today is to continue to work on this, and so to conclude new bilateral trade deals with some regional groupings, like very recently there was a deal now with Mercosur, apparently, the decades long we have been negotiating. So I think for the European Union, there's no alternative than to try to find new partners, while the US is going a little bit against the trend, global trend of the need of open trade, global trade, eliminating tariff barriers. So the US is going against that. So Europe should show the way together with China and others, and engage in as constructive as possible and as effective as possible negotiations to conclude trade deals, to open possibilities for free trade.
We see the trade deficit between China and the European countries, but at the same time, the service trade, certainly the European countries are having a good way forward. While at the same time, just one example, I was reading the other day, correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the European car companies, they are selling 3 times more in the Chinese market than the whole Chinese clean car production in the European market. So people mostly see the rhetorics rather than the real numbers. Yeah. If they go into some details and why there's a supply and demand issue there, a lot of things will be clearer.
I would say to a certain extent you have a point, and I would even add that European Union, if we want to really meet the objectives we have ourselves decided to put forward as objectives in terms of eliminating fossil fuel driven mobility, to a certain extent we need the Chinese cars. We are talking about volumes in 5-6 years' time that our citizens should be able to purchase at affordable prices. These volumes are enormous, and of course, given the potential of the Chinese economy in that field, we need these electric vehicles. And I would hope there also that we can find a way to bring to bring problems that are there now about dumping prices and about subsidies. That we can discuss this and that we can find a level playing field.
Subsidies are increasing on the European side as well on different industries as we speak.
Yeah, but the way ahead should be to find a fair level playing field for our industry, to abolish tariff barriers instead of bringing them in place, and always being conscious of the fact that we need each other. I think that China has a keen interest in our market. We are at the demand side in terms of natural resources, in terms also of the electrical mobility, given the objectives we have in terms of reducing the CO2 emissions. So we should find ways where our interests can meet.
And also China and Belgium. You have seen some very strong points of Belgium trade toward China as well. Meanwhile, here everybody knows Tintin and some of the other cultural phenomena, very strong cultural exports also from your country to China. How do you see, the role of Belgium within the bigger picture of the European Union in terms of how to work with China? What is the best way to seek solutions? How to look at the short-term tactic, long-term strategic?
I am a very strong supporter of Belgian companies, and what strikes me is that when I travel through China, I rarely visit a place where people would not point at a Belgian company being present. I was yesterday in Weihai. There was the Bekaert steel cord, a very important steel cord company established. Was recently in Xi'an, of course, where Janssen Pharmaceuticals was established as a first very important investment in China. Picagnol, the company from my city in Suzhou. So wherever you go in China, you find entrepreneurs, Belgian entrepreneurs, that do the job. Not talking about investment and trade, but really do the job. And so I put a lot of hope in the fact that sometimes even stronger than the institutions, captains of industries, industry people that work for these companies, that they find ways to increase the economic activity and interaction with China.
Mr. Prime Minister, you try to be a bridge between your part of the world, Europe, and China. But it's not an easy job. Sometimes you are being blamed for whatever reason by multiple sides, caught in crossfire. So your personal takeaway about that role and how you survive and even hopefully thrive in that role as a bridge builder?
I have a personal conviction. My conviction is that we have to do whatever possible to avoid what is now spontaneously kind of a growing, a kind of mechanical evolution to a situation where we have two blocks that are very antagonistic and where there's an enormous competition, also military competition. We should avoid that. And I think one of the ways to avoid, of course the most important one is that the representatives of these blocs try in a good multilateral system, try to find better ways to peacefully settle differences and to build a multipolar world where the power is equally shared. But I think that we also as ordinary citizens have our responsibility to try to open up as many possibilities you can imagine to have a dialogue, to exchange, to understand each other, to understand also why we have some preconceived opinions about each other and to try to counter them by reality and by exchanges. This is of course not always accessible for all the people, but at least I think persons like me have also a role to play to, even when it's criticized and it's facing antagonism and criticism, to continue to try to convince people that the future is in a stronger cooperation and that indeed we have terrible things happening now in the world, but let's try to solve them. And there I think that we have lots of hopes, but China has an important responsibility to take a role as solving conflicts and preventing conflicts.
Well, in that regard, personally speaking, you have to have a very strong mind and a very soft heart.
Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Yves Leterme, former Prime Minister of Belgium. My latest conversation with him. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on X and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.